We're seeing a number of changes to the comic industry right now as kind of the world grapples with the supply distribution problems brought on by the virus, and then some of the just general social unrest, which in theory shouldn't impact comics. I mean, comics are kind of escapist entertainment, but like with everything, these products, these brands, this output is becoming more. It's harder to separate the art from the artist than it used to be, and so things are changing. So where do we wind up? I want to do a couple predictions and also kind of go into this. Why did it all get so complicated and so tied together? Hey everybody, this is Perch. As most of you know, and I take hits on this from time to time, my general approach is I try at least to separate the art from the artist. I think that's easier said than done in some cases. And in many cases, I give the advice to people, look, if you just like a comic, if you really want to enjoy it, then it may not be the best idea to go digging into learning about the creative team's personal life or kind of what they believe in. You might discover some crazy stuff. And this has been my stance for, I mean, at least 25 years, because, some of the comic creators, like the personality difference between, say, a George Perez, a John Byrne, and a Steve Ditko are wildly different. And Ditko had some very specific ideas about the world and kind of how things worked within it. And so if you just want to enjoy like a kind of an escapist Spider-Man, then you might not want to know what Ditko's views of kind of the individual authoritarianism of human rights are. You might not want to know that. It might spoil kind of Spider-Man. And then some people are able to compartmentalize, and I think I'm pretty good at this. I can generally say, all right, here's this person with this crazy belief, and here's this product I enjoy. I'm going to enjoy this product, and I'm going to not think about this person with their crazy beliefs or something I really disagree with. And I do that for pragmatic reasons, because I think if you pay too much attention to all this, it's a road to insanity. And I say it because, like, if you watch any TV show, any movie, any read a book, anything, there is going to be somebody involved in that product that you're holding in your hand, or maybe the store you're getting into, or a car you're driving, or whatever. There's going to be somebody involved that's going to have some view that's abhorrent to you. It's impossible for it not to exist. It's going to be there. So if you dig and dig and dig and dig, you will find something you don't like, no matter what end of this political spectrum you're on. I mean, it's funny. A lot of people on the left will talk about how, well, we support Whole Foods because Whole Foods is, they're good to farmers, and they're thoughtful, and they have vegan friendly options and all the rest. And then it's like, yeah, but they're owned by Amazon, and that's Jeff Bezos. So you're on board with all the things he does. I mean, it just, you can find somebody, and the same thing is true with the right, by the way. And people are like, well, this is a good, made in the USA, like Walmart, and it's like, well, okay, but Walmart has some people on their board that support very far left views. I mean, it's just, you can't escape it ever. It's naive to think you can. So generally, it pays to try and separate kind of these things out. Otherwise, you'll wind up enjoying nothing, and you'll be suspicious and bitter at everything. With comics, it's a little bit tougher, like it is with music or with books, or even with movies to some extent, independent movies. You are getting the vision of the creator. You are getting some of themselves in the product. It's a little bit different than, say, buying a Ford car. You're getting something that's mass produced off the assembly line. There are some people who won't buy Ford cars because they way back in Ford's history, you've got maybe connections to Nazi Germany, or maybe not, depending on who you believe and everything else. So, it's like you can take anything to an extreme. There are people who will not buy a Volkswagen for that reason, and that's your choice to consume it. But when you drive around in, say, a 2020 Volkswagen, your concern should probably be, if it's going to actually break, or if the airbags are going to explode in your face, or these kinds of things. Your concern probably shouldn't be, um, is what happened back in the 40s. That time is largely past. So I think but with comics, again, you are getting a direct kind of connection into somebody. So that makes it tougher for you to separate the art from the artist. It means it's going to be in your face. It's going to be kind of inherent in what you're reading or what you're consuming. Unfortunately, these days, as we strive to get more and more insight into the creators and the people who are working on the things we enjoy, it means that this is only going to increase. We're going to hear more about it, and people are getting more comfortable about just wearing their badge on their shoulder for everybody to see. Rick Remender is posted over in the last week, "Hey, if you're a Trump fan, please unfollow me. Don't buy any of my work." And he's saying that because well, who knows? I'm not a psychologist. I can't tell you why he's saying what he's saying. But he's made a determination because it's a little bit different than somebody who works for Marvel or DC and they work as a staff member to another company. I have more respect, I guess. Well, respect is the wrong word, but I have more understanding of a creator who is truly financially responsible to themselves to make those statements versus somebody who's got a staff job and they're kind of protected within the corporation making these kinds of statements. If you work for Marvel and you make a statement like "Don't buy my books" if you're a Trump supporter, well, I mean you're one member of a creative team that wasn't picked by you. If you're the writer, you didn't pick the artist, you didn't pick the sister books that aren't written by you. I mean, if you're the writer of Spider-Man, say, there are other people who work on Spider-Man books, and you're kind of making a statement that's going to impact all of them. If you work for yourself, you're Rick Remender, you're your job. I mean, you're your books. They're yours. So if you're telling people go away and they do go away, you're impacting you. Now, granted, you're impacting the people who work with you, but they signed up to work with you. It'd be like if Ike Perlmutter or somebody, or even Joe Quesada, somebody senior up, Kevin Feige, said, hey, Trump supporters, don't buy our stuff. They are making a statement for Marvel. They're, they. It's not a good idea, I think, to say something like that. Any more than it would be a good idea to say, if you're a Joe Biden supporter, don't support our stuff. But you're at a position of more authority. You're paid to manage this portfolio and this whole assortment of stuff. So in theory, you're more plugged in to what will or won't work. I don't know if that made any sense. So, but what I think is true, and this gets to the prediction part, is that we're going to see some more firm battle lines being drawn. I think for the last 4 years, it's been less, not ambiguous, but it's been, more of a kind of wink, wink under the covers kind of thing. I mean, creators have gone out and made very public statements saying, support my book or don't support my book based on who you vote for and other things. But it's still been kind of hidden and obfuscated under a lot of other things. It is easy for you to avoid that those messages. If you just don't sign up for Twitter, you would never know you'd never know anything about Rick Remender or any of this unless he starts publishing in the book. And I guess that's my prediction is he's going to start publishing it in the books. A lot of these people are. I think even the big companies, even Marvel and DC, although I'll go all in with my prediction. I think you're going to see more creators actually putting some of the stuff that they do on Twitter actually in the books and making it clear this is what I believe in. Howard Chaykin, when he did, I can't remember the title he did. He posted some, very clear views of how he felt about politics inside the comic. So Divided States of America, I think was what. Anyway, Kelly Sue DeConnick, which with Bitch Planet would put in feminist essays. You knew where she stood inside the comic. It wasn't just on social media. And I think you're going to see that now kind of move into more mainstream books. I do think you'll see some of that appear in Marvel. I think they're going to say, you know what, it's wrong to not, to be on the fence. We're going to take a stand and we're going to put it out there. Now, I think it will be curious to watch is DC. I think DC will continue to not want to wade into those waters, and I think even from a corporate standpoint, they're going to kind of avoid jumping into that fray. But I think Marvel will, and I think Image and a lot of those titles. I mean, you're just going to see more stuff out there, and I think if you see more stuff out there, I think you're going to start to see kind of more people posting their ideologies inside the books, right or left. I do think you're going to get kind of the rise of people who are more conservative posting those messages in comics and then taking the consequences. What's interesting is this: my suspicion is that as this happens, as you see more people kind of just putting their politics and their beliefs into the books, and maybe even the big companies marketing that a little bit to some extent. I think Marvel's like, we've got, just owning it, owning this ideology from this creator. I think that we're going to discover that more and more people will not care. Meaning, I think that there's this belief. Let's see. I want to say, make sure I'm saying this right. I think that there's this belief within Marvel and within DC and within the big publishers and also within the fans on social media that if creators start doing this, if they start putting it out there, that it's either going to be a big negative, meaning people will stop buying the books and it'll have a huge sales impact, or that it will be a selling point. This is where I think the next 2 years are going to go. I think people are going to decide, hey, it would be a selling point to have the creator put this stuff out there. It's kind of like when Kelly Sue DeConnick put the feminist essays inside Bitch Planet, she would actually market it and promote that. In the solicitations, it would talk up that it's there. They would use this as part of the value add of the book. Now, what's interesting is I have a feeling that it actually was a value add or a negative. I think that the people who are not interested in that premise didn't buy the book. I think the people who were interested in the premise bought the book. And I think that the addition of the feminist essays inside the book were not really, I don't really think they moved the needle one way or another. And that's where I guess I get to of, I think as we see more comic companies putting this stuff in there and people owning it, I think we're going to see a secondary realization. Probably it's going to take a couple of years to get there, which is to say that, and maybe this will be a tough one for a lot of creators to take. Most readers care about if it's a good story or not, and if the characters are interesting and compelling. And these kind of ideological things that get inserted into the comics do not matter. If they just don't matter. And this is weird. There's going to be some people hard disagreeing. By the way, you may say, as a customer, hey, my wallet is closed to people who do things like that. And that's fine. But I would question, would you be buying the book anyway? I'm not saying, by the way, this is good. This is going to be weird. I think I'm going to get arguments from people on both sides. I'm not saying it's a good idea. I think by limiting kind of your audience, you're limiting your audience. You're actually taking dollars out of your pocket. I think that's a bad idea for comics. I don't think that helps anyone anything. I think poor retailers are kind of stuck in the middle, trying to figure out how to move this stuff as it becomes more and more polarized. But at the same time, I think that everybody kind of overinflates the importance of all this. That most comic fans, they want to read a story about Spider-Man. Most Spider-Man fans want to read a story about Spider-Man. They don't really care about the politics of the person writing it, and they really, they'll ignore a lot. Like I said before, I think most people want to separate the art from the artist. They just want to read their stupid Spider-Man story. If you put that in their face too much, to the point that it starts to detract, either people are going to continue to ignore it, or it's going to get to a level where it starts to distract from the actual story that's being told. And when that moment hits, I think that's where you're going to see sales slip and where you're going to see problems occur. But I think along with that will come the realization that, hey, most people showing up to read comics just want to read the story, just want to, be entertained. They don't want all this other nonsense, and they're not necessarily going to revolt and stop buying it, but they are going to ignore it. So the attempts to make it a selling point will fail. I don't think any more people are going to buy comics. I think that's well proven at this point, but I don't know that people have learned the lesson. More comics are not going to get sold by inserting ideology into it. The question is, are fewer comics going to get sold? And I think the answer is, I don't think it's really going to matter unless the ideology starts really chipping away at the quality. I've wandered a little bit, and this is a dense argument I'm making. So maybe I should cut my losses here and move on to another topic. I think that, put it this way, a lot of people, a lot of fans complaining about current quality of comics have asked, why doesn't J. Scott Campbell or Art Adams or some of those artists do comics. Why don't they actually get in there, and why don't they do more? And the answer is, well, it's money and everything else. But J. Scott Campbell, posted some things over the last week around the rioting and the looting, and kind of bailing out some of those people. And I saw some people saying, well, that's it. I'm never buying his work again. But I think they still would. I'm just saying, if you put out a Spider-Man and his female friends book drawn by J. Scott Campbell, I think people are going to buy it. That's just my belief. Now, if you say you get some unknown artist who has a vague sense of anatomy, and they post a bunch of things about the country needs to be overturned and all the police need to be abolished and all the rest, and that person puts a poorly drawn, crappy Spider-Man, I don't think it will sell. I think the ideology behind it matters a lot less in that picture. I think it's quality. I think it's always quality is the point. Anyway, I covered a lot of ground here. I'm sure there's some people who disagree with this, but I guess the point I'm trying to make is my prediction is that we're going to see more of this come to the forefront. And I think that's going to be followed fairly quickly by the realization that nobody really cares. Nobody wants to see it. Nobody wants to hear it. And if it gets in the way of telling just the solid Spider-Man story, then people are not going to buy it. And if the Spider-Man story behind it is solid, people will buy it. And all this stuff is kind of a waste of time. And in some cases, I would say from an editorial perspective or a comic publishing perspective, I think it's distracting to just getting the comic out to the market. I don't think ideology sells products, not in the way people think it does. I think that a lot of people make stands, a lot of people can make posts on social media, a lot of people can get outraged about things, but at the end of the day, people like what they like, and they're going to buy it or not buy it, and all this other stuff is a distraction. And so the question becomes, is that distraction, how distracting is this distraction? Is it actually getting in the way of putting out quality? If it is, yeah, you're sunk. It's my belief anyway. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Sorry this rambled. This went on for a long time. So, longer video. Sorry about that. Let me know your comments below. Like, subscribe, introduce to a friend. Follow me on Twitter or Facebook at Comic Perch. And thanks for listening.